So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I hope you are all enjoying the sunshine wherever you are. Long may it last. So, delighted today to have two of our veterans with us who are going to take you through a day in the life of a PM contractor. So, sit back and enjoy interesting stuff to come. Over to you, Angela.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the BuildForce Virtual Career Chat. My name is Angela Forbes. So welcome to our series of virtual career chats. So a spotlight on different careers, employers and projects within the construction industry. Now, this is an industry which the government has recently confirmed will play a vital role in delivering growth for Britain. So whether that's growth in new homes or in the new renewal of our national infrastructure. Now, the fun is in the delivery of this, and our main contractors and our subcontractors will tell you so. Now, today we're looking at project management within the main contractor space, and to help us bring this to life, we welcome two brilliant veterans with their own incredible and insightful journeys to share with you. So Neil Martin, Project Delivery Manager for Bentley, and Nigel Frampton, Project Manager within the Kier Group. So we'll do a Q&A at the end. However, pop any questions in the comments box and we'll pick them up at the end. But we'll hand straight over to you, Neil, and we'll switch our cameras off.
Thanks very much, Angela. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Neil Martin, Project Delivery Manager for Bentley. Bentley are a large construction sort of delivery company that have been around for 50 years. They've recently been bought out by Mott MacDonald, so you may hear, so my LinkedIn is Mott MacDonald Bentley. They've all become part of the Mott MacDonald group. I started off I left the forces 3 years ago. I was a warrant officer class 1 in the Royal Engineers as a clerk of works when I left. So it's 3 years ago, probably around now. I was probably as nervous as a lot of you are now and trying to think where I was going to go and what I wanted to do in my life. Went through the BuildForce program, which was brilliant. And initially, my first role when I left the forces in September of 23, is it 23, 22? I went into the consultancy realm. So I was working for a consultancy company, mainly on the pre-construction side of project management. I realized after about a year and a half that it really wasn't for me. I wanted to be more involved in project delivery and actually on sites, which I realized the difference. Applied for a role with Bentley as a project delivery manager, and I was taken on, and I'm employed currently as part of the @One Alliance, which is a huge group of companies which Mott MacDonald Bentley are a part of, including Skanska, Bar Hales, MWH, and what their main role is to provide new infrastructure, upgrades of infrastructure and maintenance to all Anglian Water's either clean water or water recycling sort of infrastructure and things that you see up and down the country. So what we do is within what's called an AMP, or an asset management plan of 5 years, there's a large significant amount of money which will be allocated to @One, and we're basically, as part of the client from Anglian Water, we either deliver infrastructure because it's tired and it needs revamping. It could be expansion projects because there are developments being built up and down the country. These sort of towns and cities have a loading capacity on their sewage treatment works, for example, and obviously that needs expanding because there's only so much they can take. So we're involved in the construction of those. It can be through legislation. So we have things that are dictated by the EA or by Ofwat, which will be consent levels for how clean that water is going back into the water systems. And we have to deliver new infrastructure to all the recycling infrastructure up and down the country in order to achieve those objectives. It's a very busy sector. As Angela said, it is a growing sector. @One, we're projecting nearly £2 billion worth of work over the next 5 years, hundreds and hundreds of projects within different programs and portfolios. Where I sit within that is within the water recycling non-infrastructure. And it's a bit of a backwards term within the water sector because they class infrastructure as their pipelines, and non-infrastructure would be any buildings or sort of infrastructure that supports that. Typically, I can have anything from 1 to 10 projects at any one time delivering across either the country or locally to achieve certain objectives that have been set by the client when they've given us a statement of need. Typically at the minute, I've now been relocated to one place. So I'm based out of Peterborough, working on Flag Fen, which is a very large water treatment centre. It's quite tired. So we've been tasked with a lot of what we call get well packages to revamp the works, keep it running, while in the background we're planning a large scale growth scheme. So there's a circa £100 million project to expand the works to give the water treatment centre that through life of the next 5 to 10 years with the expansion that's going on within Peterborough itself. Typically within my day as a project manager, it varies from where we are within the project life cycle. One of the terms we have to sort of get used to is within Angling Water, they have their own set of delivery gates, similar to Reba stages. However, they have their own system and they have 6 sort of delivery milestones they call from 0 to 6. So at delivery milestone 0, the client will approach at 1 and say, this is a requirement, we need this solution. So that could be, as I say, reducing consent levels for phosphates within water or ammonia levels or solids, or it could be, as I say, that there could be an expansion works required. There's a design solution done at that stage, which the project management don't tend to get heavily involved in. We'll have it sort of notified that it may be happening. A rough solution is developed with a very rough order of cost. That goes back to the business. They'll either say, yes, that looks like a viable solution, it's good value for money, proceed. If they then say that, that's where my design team will come into play. They'll start developing that design up to what's called DM1, where we'll have a design solution with a more quantified cost. We'll start looking at planning and enabling works, which is all managed and overseen by myself. That decision point, again, there's a cost. If that cost is approved, we move through to the next stage, and this is where we're pushing now to start developing the design and getting onto site. At DM2, there's your final cost submitted, where Angling Water will turn around and say, right there, that's your fixed ceiling cost. Please deliver it to within that budget. Obviously, challenges being a contractor is everyone's out to make money. It is a business, so we have our fixed ceiling cost and we aim to achieve below that because we have a pain and gain agreement with Angling Water, and that's where obviously everyone gets paid, and that's where the profits for the companies come from. So there's a lot of pressure on the project manager because everything starts and stops with a PM on the site when it comes to contracting. Typically my sort of roles and responsibilities moving through this process commercially. Obviously, we're looking at the budget, how much that particular project will cost control, monitoring it through the process. We're responsible for establishing contracts with our tier 2 contractors, be that civils, mechanical, electrical, getting that into an agreement and then monitoring those contracts to ensure the contractor performs to what they've agreed to. We look at procurement, either that through simple call-offs, it could be aggregates, but also your long lead items, things that you have to go to specialist suppliers, ensuring that those are delivered on time and also that they're to the right specification and everything is in place to receive that. And then also ensuring that your program through that construction meets those delivery points so we don't have delays on site. Because at the end of the day, it's time is money and everything goes towards that budget. So you're constantly monitoring that. A big thing which helps find from leaving the forces was leadership. You're there to persuade and bring people on. You're a motivator. You want the work to be done. You develop your own team and you want that team all to succeed. So it's even in the highs and lows, it's that leadership coming through and making sure that everyone stays motivated and gets on with the job at hand. We monitor design. It's not to say we have a technical input. We have technical managers for that and design engineers, from civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. From a project management point of view, it's keeping them to timelines because designers love, they wanted to get the best design they can. And sometimes there needs to be a point where you just have to sort of say, look, we're going to go with this design now. It meets the requirement. We have to go with it. But sorry, I'll just answer the questions maybe as I go. Someone just said, how often are required on site? It varies. You can be there on site once a week if there's certain stages of the project. Personally, I prefer to be on site more. With where I work at Peterborough, there's a large cabin set up, so I've got a desk there, and it's not that I'm there giving Overwatch and Big Brother. It's more the fact I'm on site then and ready to deal with any situations with the construction manager as they arise. I just find it easy to be on site to deal with it as it comes, but it varies. All roles these days are hybrid, so you can be working from home a day or two, working in the office if there's meetings, or on site. It's quite varied. Which brings me on to construction. Your overarching responsibility is construction. You do have a construction manager that will be there to make sure health and safety, RAMs are in place, checks all the lift plans and LOLA, and does all that sort of big end health and safety stuff, and especially checking tier 2 contractors. But it stops with the project manager, so I still have to ensure that the construction manager is checking all that. Because the last thing you want is to find out that these sort of procedures aren't in place, and if it goes wrong, you don't want to be in an investigation. It's not a nice place to be. Risk management, of course, we monitor risk from start to finish, looking at that risk costing profile, and where we can, either designing out risk or mitigating it. And if we can't mitigate it, then how we deal with it. You generally have to be a people person. You're talking with the organization, you deal with the client, you're dealing with contractors. You're also developing those people within your team, making sure that they're getting their own personal development and bringing their careers on as well. It's not just about keeping people where they are because they're good people. You want everyone to succeed. So it's ensuring that they're given the opportunities to progress and succeed as well. So again, very much like what you'd find within sort of management within the forces, you're always looking for those sort of that report on their careers are being developed. Time and planning is a huge factor within project management on a daily basis. You're constantly ensuring or trying to ensure things are on time. It never goes to plan, but it's more like firefighting and trying to keep it on track as much as possible because, as I say, time is money. Even our welfare facilities, the offices cost money, without even breaking a shovel in the ground. It's £5,000 a week just to have those facilities. So the more they're sat there with nothing going on site, you are literally burning money. And then obviously your senior leadership teams and the client won't be happy because that's money that's just not going back into that pain and gain share, which you're directly accountable for. We're there to look for products and quality to make sure that's being delivered on site. Stakeholder management is a huge one. Be that reporting directly through the chain to my senior sort of line management. You can be delivering to senior leadership teams. You may have the client visit the site and you're delivering to some of the sort of directors and they need to be happy they're getting value for money. But then you're also reporting down to the tier 2s on a weekly basis, daily basis, making sure that progress is where it is. So again, I suppose some of you will have experienced that. So it's another thing that you can sort of be sort of confident about is you're used to either delivering to privates, corporals, all the way through to maybe having to brief up, your higher sort of ranked officers and things like that. It's all there. You do that whole spectrum. And these are things that should give you confidence. Health and safety, and especially well-being. Again, like I said, it's not necessarily I'm directly responsible for checking RAMs. I do check them just for my own peace of mind. But it's more that awareness. I have to make sure that, if we know there's temporary works coming into place, is there a temporary works coordinator? Are they designed correctly? Has the lift plans been done correctly? Are they following those lift plans? It still sits on my shoulders to make sure that's done correctly. My construction manager will do the physical check-in, but I need to manage and oversee that as that sort of overarching manager of the project, if you like. And finally, we have to look at process, change control, change management, how that's dealt with, and also following Angley Water's processes and making sure all that's in place so that everything goes through those decision gates correctly, everything's documented, so that when it comes to project handover, there's no complications and we all get paid at the end of the day. Personally, from a PM point of view, just what I learned, lessons learned, I suppose. I was very nervous when I decided to leave the forces, and even when I accepted my first role as a project manager, and I was like, "What am I doing? Can I do this?" You get huge sort of spells of imposter syndrome. Um, I would say that trust in the leadership and management that you've gained through serving in the forces, it is second to none. It's quite often joked at from myself, from some of my management, that nothing phases me. I don't flap. I don't sort of go into a breakdown and panic. It's always right. Something's gone wrong. How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to get through it? And I think that comes naturally. So there's elements within yourself that will naturally help you along the journey of project management at any level. Other areas that may need to be looked at, I'd say, is commercial, where you can try and sort of read up, get some courses under your belt with it. They're just introductions to it. You don't have to be a commercials expert, but I think it just helps. What resettlement courses did I do? I did an introduction to NEC, and that was, again, it was literally an introduction just to give you the idea of what an NEC contract was. We'd use some contracts within the forces. Obviously, there's loads of different ones out there. There's JCT, depending on the different types and what you and who you end up working for and what contracts they use. ILX portal, sorry, I'm not sure what the ILX portal is. I wouldn't get hung up on doing courses like SMSTS unless you really have got time and there's the funding there to do it. Things like your health and safety courses and things, I found a lot of the time that if the company that offers you a role wants you to do that, they'll send you on that course. So don't panic if you don't feel you're fully qualified to walk onto a construction site and deliver something, because at the end of the day, if the company wants to employ you, they will have that training ready to go, because they have sort of across the board KPIs and training syllabuses that they like certain levels to be at, so they make sure everyone is trained the same way.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to attack this slightly differently. I'll give a brief intro into myself, my journey, the challenges that I faced, the upskilling that I've needed to do, transferable skills, what I've used so far to date, lessons learned, and then a little bit on final thoughts. So who am I? So Nigel Frampton, 30 years in the army, officially out January 25. So last year I was in exactly the same position as many of you on this call. Didn't quite know what I was going to do or where I was going to go. My background isn't technical, so it was infantry and logistics. So construction was not something that was even on my radar at that time. Luckily, I was in a job working in a NATO headquarters where I could spend my 12 months doing resettlement. I probably didn't do as much as I should have done. Obviously, I attended the CTP and all the other resettlement activities that are there and available. And then once I'd done that, I thought, well, I'm ready then to go out and get employment. So I looked at the job market, looked at, some of the social media sites such as LinkedIn, sent out my CVs, covering letters, probably to maybe 6 or 7 different employers, and I heard nothing back, nothing at all. And I thought, well, that's a bit of a problem. How do I improve that? What's next? So I carried on looking, and I found a position close to where I live as a PM in the rail industry with Kier. I looked on that great platform that is LinkedIn and realised that there was somebody that I'd worked with 10 years previously that was working for Kier. So I reached out and just asked about the culture at the company and whether it was a good organisation to work for, and some other just basic questions, and told them that I was interested in the PM role for this upgrade of the rail. They come back to me, which was great, and said maybe this is not what you want to do. You don't have that experience. You don't have that construction insight. Have you thought about water? So Kier, for those that don't know, have 4 divisions. I think of it like that, as like the army. They have transportation, property, construction, and then natural resources and nuclear networks, which is the one that I actually sit in. I was then offered in July last year, I think it was, so nearly a year ago, a 2-week placement at Mogden Sewage Treatment Works, which is down in Twickenham, which I took up. And during that time, I spent a few days with the operations, understanding site management, sub-agents, agents, etc. Spent some time with engineers to understand what their daily role was. Excuse me, moved on to commercial, and sat down with the commercial team to just go over the very high level aspects of the commercial. And as Neil's already alluded to it, there's quite a lot to it. And then my last 2 sort of areas were with the planners and designers, and then my final 2 days was with a project director, which again was really useful to understand what they wanted in regards to the project and how to drive it forward. I walked away from that placement thinking, okay, well, this is what I want to do now. I'm interested. Thankfully, Kier felt the same, and then offered me, well, first of all, they done 2 informal conversations, and as you're probably all aware, nothing's ever informal. They were 2 interviews. The first one was with the project director of the area that I work in, which is the Thames Valley. And once I sort of got through that one, I was then given a second meet and greet stroke interview with the senior project manager for the Thames Valley region, who obviously liked my answers to his questions, and I got an offer of employment in sort of October when I was on terminal leave last year, which was great. I've talked about relaxed and informal. Just be aware of that. Lots of companies do this, and I don't know if this is a Kier thing across the board, but they tend to not try and catch you off guard, but they'll call you in for a meeting, and if you're not ready for it, you'll find yourself coming unstuck. So I'd already done some preparation. I'd looked at what I'd delivered through my career, right the way from sergeant through to SO3, and then thought, okay, what items can I translate into project management, and how does that look? Everything from overseas exercises to just delivering very basic upgrades to welfare centres or whatever else it might be. Because what Kier really wanted, and what I guess the industry want, is they want to know about, can you handle the monetary side of things, cost, value, time, quality, all that good side of project management, which is something that you need to get into the detail about if you are going to come into project management. So the challenges. So first of all, my first part was, how do I add value? Where do I add value, and can I add value from the start? And it's very, very difficult. Some people on this call may be from a technical background and have civils experience or MICA, mechanical, electrical engineering experience. So you have a little bit to fall back on. I'm a generalist. I didn't. So I took time. I'm only 8 months in, but you need to take time to bed into the team, and they need to see what you can offer, which comes, and you do add value. And there's something that you just need to remember in the back of your mind, because at some points you will think to yourself, am I good enough? Am I delivering what I should be at this stage? And 100% you will be. For me, I've already sort of touched on it, the knowledge of construction and the civils aspect. So many of my fellow project managers, within Kier have gone through an already specified route to where they are. They may have been a site agent, a sub-agent, an agent, moved up through the ranks as you would do in the military, and then gone into a PM role, or even through the engineer route. So for me to be sort of moved straight in, it's quite difficult, but also it's doable, and I guess I'm testament to that first and foremost. Understanding terminology, obviously we've got our own terminology within the military, but when you move into non-infra sewage treatment works, as Neil sort of alluded to, there's lots of different terminology that you have to understand, and not just understand what the acronyms mean, but the process behind it. So, the PST, primary settlement tank, what does that do? What does it look like? And I won't baffle you anymore, but the NTP, notice to proceed, which is a commercial aspect, you can't move any further forward until you receive NTP from your client. So these aspects you just got to get your head into quite early on and dig into the detail. And then again, Neil sort of mentioned it, and this is a challenge, and I admit I'm only 8 months in, but credibility and imposter syndrome is something that creeps up on you. So you can come in quite confident, understanding what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, but within a few months you soon realize that there's some other areas that you may be a little bit weak on and that you need to work on. So it's completely normal, and I think you as an individual just have to get through it. For me, my get out is physical activity. We've been in the military, that's what we do. I go out for a ride, or a run, and I just think things through in a logical sequence, and I normally come back with a way forward. So just don't beat yourself up too much, I guess, is my key on that one. So then upskilling, I probably am not the best advocate for resettlement and doing the activities that the CTP and the military give you, and they give you lots of funds to do this with, and time. I probably didn't take up as much as I should have done, but thankfully Kier as an organisation support personal development, and I've gone through a water industry course talking about the asset management program that Neil alluded to. I've gone through a Thames Water passport because that's who our client is, so to understand how they operate. I've done a SMTSS course because, again, the organisation Kier wanted me to have that construction background. I'll be doing a temporary works course through Kier. I've done my APM, which I'm sure some of you are on or looking to do. And I've also done a Geary course, which is a construction get it right course. So there was lots of upskilling there, and I'm still going. This is 8 months in. I'm nowhere near the finished product. So along with what I do on a daily basis, which is everything Neil does, everything from commercial down to site activity, I need to fit those in and make sure I get those in my locker sooner rather than later. So that leads me on to transferable skills. You've all done this, and you've probably done it to death. You know what it is. So the big one is leadership and management for me. Coming from an infantry background, that was my go-to for everything. There was a little dip for you when I come in. There was a sub-agent who was on probation, who was struggling, not in their job per se. They were really good and really detail orientated, but when it come to PowerPoint presentations and delivery to the client and briefings, they would often throw up difficult conversations that would knock off the sort of run of that meeting. And it was apparent that the senior leadership team were not very happy with this, and they were going to fail their probation. So I stepped in and said, look, give that individual to me. I'll work with them to understand why they say what they say, and then try and give them a bit of guidance as to how to better interact during these meetings, which has worked, and the individuals passed their probation and now they're a valued member of the team. So there's just a little bit on where we can add value and what we can do to improve teams. Decision making under pressure, again, Neil's mentioned this. The military are very good at doing this. We've done this all our lives. You're born and bred into this. It's it's something that comes naturally. But I guess the big three drivers are that iron triangle, which are time, quality, and cost. You know, in the civilian sector, it's all about the money. It's all about the bottom line and making sure that your company's profitable. So whenever you're making these decisions, you need to think about the second, third, sometimes even fourth order consequences. Planning. Not many people think about this as a path in the civilian sector. So I guess it's a bit of a plug, but we're really good at planning and sequencing. We understand, we think logically normally, and that's what's needed in a good plan. And so we can do that, and often you can find little efficiencies within the program with your good planning and your understanding, and just like I say, just general logical thinking. So again, lessons learned. So as I sort of said, civils knowledge, terminology. I'll put MICA in with that as well. So MICA is, for those that are not aware, mechanical and electrical disciplines, understanding their knowledge, their terminology, and I come to it a little bit later on, but it's a team effort at the end of the day. Water knowledge. I didn't have the background water knowledge, and that's a big thing when you come into water. They say, okay, so what's your experience? You know, what have you done before? I didn't have any, but there is an open source, you know, on the internet, and you can, if you know what you're looking for, you can type in, you know, AMP8, AMP7. If you're technically minded and you want to look into screening, you can look at screens and PSTs, etc., and they're pretty good at giving you that sort of detail, and that does work. But that's probably something that I should have done before moving into this role. The big one, which I think most of us struggle with, is the commercial aspect, because it is a difficult aspect to get your head around. Understanding finances, notice to proceed, requests for payments, you know, what does that look like? So Kier also come under the ICME contract suite, and we use the Burgundy book out of that. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's a collaborative approach, which basically, as Neil sort of alluded to, is a pain and gain. So if you go over and you overspend by £100,000, then you split that bill between you and the client, and that's 50,000 each, and vice versa. So again, if you can make 100k efficiency, then you know you've made yourself 50k there, and so does the client. If you go over, you know, you're looking at LDs. What are LDs? Well, liquidated damages, and that might be a daily rate. Excuse me, might be a weekly rate, and that can soon add up if you can't get that part of the project through at the time specified. And so that leads me really on to sort of final thoughts and my journey so far. The first one is use and build a network in the chosen area that you want to go into, whether you know where that is already or not. Look at other roles. Again, I sort of alluded to it. You know, we're good at planners. You know, project management is an art. It's very niche. You know, again, I've said, you know, you do everything from contracts right at the top, all the way through to site activity and everything in between. So you sit on, you know, I sat on a design meeting only 2 hours ago. I was, you know, sit on a weekly planning meeting for the 3 projects that I run, and so you cover the whole breadth of everything. But there's other roles out there that are just as important, and you may have the skill set for. So just broaden your horizons a little bit, I guess. And then the last one is utilize your team, because it's not just about you. It's about you know, I've got a senior design manager. He does all the design piece, and if I have a design question, I go direct to him. You know, my QSs are invaluable when it comes to understanding the financing and contracts, and ensuring that we're on the right track with everything. The same with the planners. I've got a really good sub-agent that I've alluded to, who digs into the detail of the you know, risk assessment and method statements, which is known as RAMs. And so yeah, it's all about the team, and so it's not just you as a project manager. That is me.
Nigel, that was amazing. Thank you very much. If I could ask Neil to come online, to ask Caroline to come online. If you do have any questions, then please raise your hand or write them in the box. Nigel, I'll just stick with you just whilst you've got the kind of old tonsils ready to keep talking. You obviously infantry, an old colleague in Kier just made that leap over a bit more plausible. Can I ask, just as a perception piece, what was the reaction of those that you served with when you said that this was going to be your chosen career path?
Well, I think they were happy more than anything. They were pleased that I'd found employment, and so I think that the surprise is more from me than them, because I didn't realise, the sector and understand construction quite like I do now. And it's a technical business, and you need to do your homework before you come in where you can. So I think I was probably a little bit more surprised about what was required than my sort of friends and that within the infantry.
Right, okay. And you, if I can just take you back to the actual onboarding process itself. So just those first couple of weeks or months within Kier, what did that look like? Was it a structured program? Were you up in head office for a couple of weeks? Just talk through that.
Yeah, so I come into a organisation that was probably in the process of change. So we've now moved into a framework organisation. But the initial onboarding piece was very structured. You come in, you have to, very similar to, I don't know if it's still called MATs or ITDs or whatever it was called in the military, but you have to do a number of different online activities to get yourself up to speed. Obviously, you then have to get all your IT together and phones, etc. But it's a really smooth process, or it has been for me. And that part was quite easy. I guess the bit that's difficult is I'm currently hybrid, so going out and meeting the team is difficult, and making those relationships and building those networks. We started off, I think, maybe 20, 30 people strong within the framework. We're now at 70, and we've got, I think, 8 or 9 different projects, so across the Thames Valley region. So it's getting out and seeing people. Right.
And at the interview stage, what courses did you actually have on the CV at that point?
Oh, now you're asking. So I'd had APM fundamentals, and I didn't actually have much in regard to courses, but I had things like I've done a postgraduate diploma and a level 7, obviously you get through the military as well. So I heavily went on experience and translating what I'd done into sort of civilian speak, if that's the right way of putting it. Like I said before, trying to equate what I'd done into financial terminology so that I could explain that across to the people in the interview.
And do you think you did that well? Obviously, if you got the job.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you struggle, or
yeah, I got the job, but I think it was the communication piece that sold it for me, and also the fact that I think most people in the military are quite good at assimilating information, and so I mentioned that during my interview that I'm a quick learner, and I'll start where I need to and understand the process, and I think that was something that the team here were really impressed with and thought, yeah, okay, this is the guy.
And just on that, was it a veteran that was interviewing you?
No, it wasn't. No.
Okay.
This was, so the project director was 30 years as a civil engineer, and then the senior project manager was same, 35 years as a civil engineer. So it was a tough crowd.
So so a lot of the technical skills might be in place, but the leader, somebody to bring it together, was evidently missing, and that's fantastic on their part, and credit to them for seeing that in you and for being open to that. If this wasn't your background, just to you as well, Neil, on that, just in terms of qualifications that you had on your CV. The only reason that I want to come to this is obviously we will get guys and girls coming to us as service leavers, maybe no construction experience, and the only thing that might really be going for them is the fact that there's a couple of safety or PM quals that just gets them to the table. So just for clarity, what would you advise in that space for the PM role?
I'm a bit of a probably a anomaly really because I don't have PMQ.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
But I think it was more I found that sort of Nigel's already said as well. I found during the interviews, which I realised weren't this right. What have you done? Tell me. It was a chat, and I think they're looking for more of those transferable skills. If you can relate in a way that something is project management, then they will take that on board and issue experiences. And it doesn't have to be construction. You know, you've managed a task or something can be a project without actually physically building something. But as I said, I used to reinforce it with, look, you know, I've got these enhanced learning credits. I've got the availability to do courses if you need me to, but I'm always willing to learn. And it's even now I get thrown courses all the time, and I've never said no to a course because it's always about that sort of CPD. And I think that's what helped more was, you know, showing that willingness to learn and, you know, sort of getting across that you can adapt quickly and you can learn. That employers seem to want more than a certificate that says, look, I'm a project manager, because, you know, it's almost your life skills and what you've developed through your career that will bring you along more, I think, than actually that qualification. Yes, it helps, and I'm not going to say don't go to your PMQ, but it's more looking inward to yourself and what you've got to bring to the table than just that certificate.
Right, and you're ex-Royal Engineers, is that right?
I am, yeah. Sorry, I was a Royal Engineer for 23 years. I mean, I did have a quite heavy construction background, so I was quite lucky, I suppose, in my career to have done a lot of project management, construction management, and I've been involved in design and sort of some large capital works projects within the military around the world, which I suppose I could fall back on. But
just
that's
on
not to
that,
put people off.
yeah. Just on that, how similar or different is it for those Royal Engineers listening?
To be honest with you, there are some small elements which are no different. You're still dealing with tier 2 contractors, you know, you're still sort of, but the accountability is so much more now I'm out of the military. You know, the buck stops with me, and there's no sort of, oh, sorry, we've got over budget. Never mind, we'll just go ask for some more money. You know, you're really on the chopping block if that happens. So there's a lot more pressure. The time scale is different. I found. I almost think when I left the forces, I was almost like a spaniel with a tennis ball. You know, you throw the ball and they're straight back with it. What do I do now? What do I do now? And you realise that projects in the big wide world, it's like, well, we're not building it for 2 years. And you're like, what? So what we're doing now? Well, we're planning it, and it is a lot slower pace. There's a lot more to it, but the pace is a lot slower. And that was something I had to get used to, probably different to the military. Was, you know, some Royal Engineer projects, it's right, we're building this. All right, when we're doing it, yesterday. Oh, okay. And you're on a plane and off you go and deliver it. Whereas that doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Do you miss that? Or do you have a better quality product if you've got time to plan?
I think you get a better quality product. I certainly, I kind of miss that sort of excitement of jumping on a plane and you're sort of trying to do fag packet sketches while you're on the plane to get somewhere to deliver it. And you're thinking, how am I going to build this out of 2 telephone poles and a bit of aggregate? But it definitely helps you once you, I suppose it's helped me, like I said. I think that's what gives you that thing where you don't get phased, because you're like, look, I've delivered things maybe not to the same scale, but a lot quicker and with a lot less resources. So it gives you the confidence to know you've got a good team and you've got this time to plan it. But yeah, I suppose some days I do.
Okay, and to James Gallagher that's listening, if there's any howlers that Neil's done during his career, then yeah, please come online and tell us. So I can see there's that connection and a friendship between you.
Well, the chat box will go crazy now.
Right, so both of you, and I'll put a question to both of you, but to you first, Neil. Right, contract. So I think because it's just so fundamental, it underpins everything that we do, and it's probably just a bit cloak and dagger because the service leavers don't quite know what it is. So just to dispel that myth, is it way more complicated than you thought it would be? Does it really sit fundamentally within your lane, or have you got other people that you can lean on? Is it the Bible that guides you every day, just as a starter for 10?
Yeah, I don't think it's any too dissimilar to what we've done within the military. As I say, it's just the accountability is different. But like the military, it's all about building the team around you. And as the project manager, you're not the expert on everything. I can't go out and design a process for a new water treatment facility. All I know is I've got process engineers that do that, and you trust in their sort of design, and it's just you know who to go to get the right answers and make decisions based on that sort of advice, and just having that confidence in the decision making, right, that's what we're going to do. And then obviously being accountable if it goes right or wrong. But yeah, it's not, I'm not the one sat there making those design decisions or the contract decisions. And yeah, even within a contract, there is a bit of flexibility because you don't want to be that robust all the time. You know, we're an hour late, that's it, we're going to bill you, because then you're just breaking down bridges and those relationships with people. It's all about collaboration, really.
Okay, and how easy do you find the collaboration? Does that just naturally come to you because of your background?
I think it does, yeah. I think I don't know whether it's just me, but I think generally, again, probably everyone on this call, we have this natural ability to talk face to face. It's almost our first port of call, and you can build relationships with people quite quickly. You know, we'll meet on site over a coffee, and then we'll look at it from there, rather than emails and Teams calls and meetings. You do find it's just comes natural to us, I suppose. It's my first option is right. We'll meet on site and we'll discuss it face to face.
Okay, and Nigel, how responsive are your team when you want to talk to them rather than email them? Is that a bit of a culture shock for some of them?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think we're quite lucky. I'm very similar to Neil. I think you've got the experts there, haven't you, that understand the commercial aspect a lot better than perhaps I do. But you've got to know the basics and the fundamentals, because you can't operate without that knowledge. So it's getting into that and understanding what you need to understand in regards to financing, you know, the pain gain piece and, you know, cost capture, whether you're in ECI. We go through stage gates. So in Thames Water, they have stage gates. So stage gate 2, 3, 4, etc. So you need to know where the money's coming from and you know at what point money gets released. So that's where you've got your experts and they can guide you and give you that sort of knowledge, which is great.
Okay, and again, gain pain is just a mechanism of you working collaboratively so that as a team you're benefiting and making decisions in the project's interest rather than your own. Right, a couple of questions that have come in. CSCS card, I assume you both have one. What colour?
I've got a white one. I could have got black, but to be honest with you, I don't think it doesn't really matter what colour you've got. I did that once I joined with Bentley. They did I did your tick test because I had qualifications in construction, so that's it. They put you through, get your white card. As I say, I could have got a black card. I'm getting a blue card as well because I've done my AP lifting, but it's just typically that it's something to get you on site so that you've proven you are competent and able to be unsupervised on a site. I wouldn't get hung up on the card colours and things like that. There is a good checker. The online checker does it for you. But again, I don't know about other companies, but from what I've seen, you know, it's something you do once you're in the role because they will get you what you need to do.
Okay, some of our health and safety managers might be having kittens with that answer, but yeah. And to you, Nigel.
Well, so exactly that. So I'm in the process of getting mine. I don't have it currently.
Yeah,
so
okay.
yeah, I'm applying for it as we speak.
Yeah,
Okay,
so you're not allowed to roam around the sites before you've got that. And obviously, if it's a specific role, like I said, I've got AP lifting, then it is that colour. But from a management point of view, you can go down the technical route or you can have a black card. It's not so strict on that.
Okay, and a question to Caroline. Nigel mentioned a work placement, a 2-week work placement that he undertook that probably really gave him an insight into industry, into the employer, into a project, and that probably just cemented for him what might have been a bigger leap for somebody from the infantry. The value of work placements, Caroline, what would you say on that?
Oh yeah, to both sides. The value of a work placement to the employer allows them to see how bloody amazing you all are, and if there are any gaps on your CV, they're plugged on that. There aren't once you do that work placement. And for you as the candidate, then it gets you to trial different disciplines out, different roles out, different organizations as well. You might get on site and think, oh Christ, this isn't for me, but then you've just done 3 days. It's not employment. And then equally, we've had candidates who we've put on site, and the project directors love them, and they've secured a role off the back of it 2 weeks later. So it is an organic way of securing employment, and just gives you that experience and helps you work out what you do and you don't want to do. So yeah, do as many as you can, and we're always here to offer those for you.
And I think what I'd say as well to add to that is, you're looking at project management, but don't be disheartened if maybe you haven't necessarily got the experience or that background to go in as a project manager. It's a new career.
Yeah.
You're better off going as an assistant project manager, learning your craft and stepping into that role than drowning, because once you drown, you're probably hard to recover.
Absolutely. Do you know, Neil, that's a really good point. I had a conversation with one of our employers this morning, exactly that. I call it a sideways step, not a step down. And then you can learn at your own pace. And you guys upskill really, really quickly anyway. But you've got that career progression. But you can go in as that assistant or that junior PM. Every organisation calls it different. And you can learn at your own pace. You will be supported as well. And so you'll have that buddy to help you along as you go in as the project manager. Well, Nigel knows you will have to hit the ground running. So it depends, we're all very different. How does your psyche work? But really good way of going in as that trainee or that assistant.
Without giving any numbers away for both of you, did you transition on what your military salary was? Any major deviance from that?
I'm better, a lot better now than I was. To be honest with you, well, I mean, I don't mind talking about my previous role, but as a Lefters warrant officer, I was on about 50k. I sat down and knew I was working through a subsidised lifestyle. So what I did was worked out realistically, right? A mortgage, cars. You don't get as much necessarily travel pay. You're gonna have to pay for dental, medical, unless it's in the thing. Just basically worked out my cost of living that once I was away from that subsidised lifestyle. And that gave me a minimum to aim for. And a few companies were coming in around the 55 to 65 mark as a entry sort of into the PM, and some companies offer more or less, which was good for me. Some offer sort of less salary but offer a car allowance. It's something else you got to look into. The big bit of advice I learned quite quickly, not to forget about your pension because of the tax little implications on that. But then some companies are, oh, you're on a pension, so we can offer you less. No, that's irrelevant. I mean, now I'm on quite a lot more than I was as a WO1, if I'm honest, but that's just through stepping through roles over the last 3 years. But I would say don't aim for the stars and think, you're going to walk into a 6-figure job. If somebody's offering you that, then they'll want their pound of flesh. And it'll be a lot of pressure. But at the same time, you know your worth. And look at what you need to comfortably live in that big wide world, and that's what you aim for.
No, great advice, Neil. And to you, Nigel.
So I was very honest when I went in for my informal interviews, and just sort of mentioned I'll be happy to be on what I'm on now as a captain. So thankfully that was low to middle bracket of my role. Clearly, with my lack of experience and knowledge, they were happy to come in at that level. So that's what I did. I was just very honest with them. Obviously I've got the pension on top of that, but that didn't come into the conversation. So yeah, I was fortunate, I guess, just to come in at the same pay grade or pay that I was as a captain.
Okay, and it's important that we do the good, the bad, and the ugly on the transition as well. So, just on that piece, what gets you most frustrated, or what was the most disappointing part of the transition itself? You can just share that aspect. To you, Nigel. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So
You're smiling.
yeah, there's a few areas. Obviously, the 12 months is a long time. You need to do your maths and understand how you want to resettle and what you're looking to do. That can be quite frustrating, especially if you've got an offer of employment and you're ready to move on. Within the job itself, you know, having those relationships with your client and the subcontractors and just being the tier one middle guy is quite frustrating at times, because you know how you want it delivered or how it needs to be delivered, but there's constraints with either the client or the subcontractor. So that's a bit difficult to navigate at times. They would be my big challenges, I would say.
Okay, and to you, Neil.
I think the hardest thing at the time, which now looking back, I understand and makes complete sense, was the time sometimes you will go between an interview, be it formal or informal, and maybe getting that job offer. You know, you start thinking, "What, am I not worthy? Did I perform badly?" And you only realize that actually they're not interviewed you, want to employ you, but they're waiting for a new band of works to come in that they may be tendering for, and that's the role they want you in. So they're not going to offer you a role, so they know they've won that work to put you in a role.
Right. Okay. Any final closing comments that you've got, Neil? Any just last things that you want those guys listening to know?
For me, I think, you know, it is daunting and it's nerve-wracking, and you think, my God, have I done the right thing? But looking back, absolutely did, and it's a hugely rewarding sort of career role. It really is. It's absolutely challenging at times, and there are times when you're banging your head against the wall and, you know, crying in the corner. But then other times it really is. It's what drives me to get out of bed every day. Love the role, love the challenges, and everyone I think has got sort of those capabilities and willingness to do it. It's something that comes natural to us. So believe in yourself. That's what I'd say.
Love that, Neil. And to you, Nigel.
100% agree with everything Neil said. I would say for me, it's the tangible outputs. You know, we're delivering something that actually makes a difference. So that gets me up and out every day. What did I say, 8 months in? I am 8 months in. So ask me in a year. But I'm sure I'll still be loving it, because yeah, it's a really good job and thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, don't overthink things, and don't beat yourself up, and just keep going, because you'll get plenty of knockbacks. I know I did.
Okay, well, listen, thank you to Neil and Nigel for their incredible contribution today. Two great examples of industry benefiting from our armed forces. Again, to those watching, Kier and Bentley, just look at how these veterans are thriving in that environment. Two brilliant employers, so worth having a look at. Remember, you're not alone. BuildForce are here to support and guide you as you transition, so please get in touch if you have any questions, and I'll hand over to Caroline for some final insights.